Frank de Boer's tenure at Crystal Palace began with a defeat, and much of the analysis of the team's performance revolved around de Boer's imposition of a possession-based style and whether that chimes with what his squad offers. While players have been added, the imprint of Sam Allardyce's style, direct, quick and physical, is still on a team that is now expected to play an Ajax-inspired retention-based system. Frank de Boer mainly used a 4-3-3 at Ajax, with a central midfielder dropping back to cover when the fullbacks pushed up, great rotational fluidity in midfield, and centre-backs who are comfortable with the ball at feet. De Boer often used an attacking midfielder as a false nine, sometimes Siem de Jong or Davy Klaassen, now at Everton, encouraging the sort of movement and triangles of passing that bore the hallmarks of someone schooled in the football of Johan Cruyff and Louis van Gaal. However, as Prior Ramesh noted in a benefit article on de Boer's Ajax tenure, in his last 2 seasons at the club, the Dutch manager seemed to run out of ideas. While he used a 3-4-3 against sides who played a 4-4-2 and experimented with his forward line, de Boer was not a particularly strong manager when it came to adaptation, either in-game or strategically across the course of a season. Ajax also became reminiscent of Van Gaal's failures at United, playing a lot of horizontal passes without much in the way of penetration or verticality, and even deploying the centre-back Mike van der Hearn, a bit part player at Swansea now, as a centre-forward to win the ball as a long ball plan B, again not dissimilar to Van Gaal's use of Marouane Fellaini. In his first game at Palace, de Boer went for a 3-4-3 of sorts, but with the aerial presence of Christian Benteke, certainly a better centre-forward than the Swansea centre-back. Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Wilfried Zaha played as inside forwards, bursting beyond Benteke when possible, with wing-backs Patrick van Aanholt and Joel Ward out wide. Both Van Aanholt and Ward are full-backs first and foremost though, despite the Dutchman's good goal-scoring record while at Sunderland. And the midfield axis of Jason Puncheon and Luka Milivojevic seems unbalanced. Puncheon has played most of his career in an attacking midfield role, while Milivojevic is a very competent but deep-sitting defensive midfielder who was even used by de Boer as a centre-back in pre-season. This created a disjointed divide between the two elements of the team, with an attacking unit somewhat estranged from a defensive one. In Timothy Fosu-Mensah and former Ajax man Redewald, Palace have 2 defenders who can play a possession style, but the rest of the team seems geared to attacking with pace and crosses. Palace need Ward and Van Aanholt to push forwards to create positional overloads across the wide and half spaces with the inside forwards, which will require adaptation, especially from Ward. Van Aanholt managed this reasonably well against Huddersfield, but Ward didn't, which created an unbalanced shape, dragging Loftus-Cheek back into the space that Ward should have been holding. Palace also seemed to create their passing triangles on either flank, but without much interplay between the central midfield axis, which meant that switches in play often went through the back line rather than while moving forwards. This is the downside to de Boer's style when it isn't married to players who are used to playing this way while also being progressive. In other words, Palace looked in danger of replicating the Van Gaal problem, a focus on retaining possession leading to a lack of vertical penetration. When Palace looked good last season, they played with width and directly using the pace and skills of Zaha and Andros Townsend, the creativity of Puncheon or Johan Cabaye, and the aerial ability of Benteke. Frank de Boer is seeking to impose a very different way of playing, and it will take time for them to adapt, if indeed they can. While players like Fosu-Mensah, Redewald, Milivojevic and Zaha are good enough to fit the style, Palace need to play with greater balance and with better wide men. If they don't, de Boer's style will end up resembling the worst of Van Gaal's Manchester United without the players of the same quality, and Crystal Palace will likely fail.